Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm going to give it about 3 minutes before I actually start. Um, if you're in the chat, please let me know. Hi, Chris. Going to give it about 2 more minutes for people to show up. Sorry. Switch players I have here. Hi, Jason. So basically, the agenda sort of for tonight, while people are coming in here, is we're going to talk first in general about the season. We're going to talk a little bit about the lineup. Obviously, we've just, if you've been online for the past 2 hours, Art just released on Newsday the news of who's going to be scratched, who's playing tomorrow, with only one real surprise. So I'm going to go over some of those you can guess from the pages I have up currently. You all can hear me, right? Okay, that's good to know. But yeah, so as you can tell from the screen they currently have, we'll be discussing the two player choices that are going to be probably pretty common throughout the next first month of the season, which is roughly third line wing and I guess third pair right defenseman. And from there, we'll talk about just possible other teams and what else we're going through. And of course, any other questions that pop up. So, 3 active chatters. I got 5 viewers. Okay, so we're giving it 1 more minute and then we'll begin. guess how to lines an analogy tweet, but get that there if we can. There we go. Good. Thank you, Jason. Okay. 30 more seconds, and then we'll begin, and people will join us as we join us. Okay, so then let's begin. So, welcome to the first Isles videocast of this coming season. For now, just for those of you who haven't seen one of these before, the advantage, for what it's worth, over any other podcast is that we can actually call up stats and other pages during the cast to sort of look things up and show them visually. Due to copyright issues, showing clips is probably not going to happen during one of these casts, because obviously that would probably get myself a strike against my YouTube page, and I prefer not to have that happen. If I can have that happen during the season, maybe I will. But for now, since the season hasn't started, it's really not worth risking it for nothing. Sorry. Anyhow, the last videocast we did was actually, we did 2 videocasts during the off-season. Did one sort of practice one where I talked about what I thought the Isles should do coming into free agency. If any of you watched that one, and I'm not sure any of you did, because I only have a few viewers here and I only had a few viewers for that one, a lot of my talk there was that I thought the Isles' really important thing at the time was sort of rebuilding their bottom 6 with a bunch of cheap, solid players as opposed to going for anyone flashy. The Isles did really neither, and instead decided to let it rock, basically have both their kids who had a chance of missing the team start with the team, and then keeping the same bottom 3 as last year. As you could guess from the fact that I suggested they not do that last part, I'm not quite a fan of that. Kuhlman has struggled at times the last 2 years, though he was better last year. Chimera is, well, we'll get to Jason Chimera in a little bit, because he's a little bit of a special player, and I don't mean special in the greatest way. And Cizikas and Clutterbuck are what they are. That said, it is what it is, and that's the roster we have. So it's a forward roster, which in part looks very similar to last year, but not really. In fact, I have right now on the screen on the left there the expected forward line with one exception, and I'll get to that in a little bit, in that Jason Chimera will be starting opening night over Josh Hosang on third line right wing. For those of you who haven't figured this out and how the Isles work, I expect the next game, which I think is Saturday, the home opener, is going to have Hosang is almost certainly going to be in there, probably in place of Chimera, unless maybe Beauvillier has struggles in the first game. So I expect Hosang to be back in there for game 2. Whether that's, he should be out of there in game 1, we'll get to more, but just putting that out, I would not expect Chimera to be in the next game based on how the Isles have worked in the past, though, of course, Doug Waite does change things. But as I was saying there, the interesting thing here is that while the roster is in large part the same, the top 3 lines all have basically at least one change in configuration. You've got Everly on top line instead of Josh Bailey. Your second line obviously has Matt Barzal at center. And your third line, hold on a second. There we go. Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you on that, Chris. And I don't want to get off track here, but violence is not really. Chimera is not really known for being physical. Hi, Blukes. Uh, Chimera is not really known for being physical. Chimera is known for being fast, a scorer, and Waite couched the terms to Staple as being the veteran presence. I think it's very much the more important thing there is Doug Waite wants veteran presence on there. Which in fact is why I was kind of surprised that both Beauvillier and Barzil made the team out of camp, and I still suspect that had Alan Quine and Shane Prince been healthy, the Isles might not have had Beauvillier make the team out of camp, or maybe even Hosang at this rate, just because coaches don't like having that many young players on their teams. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be it's a veteran thing rather than anything to do with physicality. Again, Chimera is not really the physical threat. The Isles don't really have, for better or for worse, and really for better, the Isles don't really have a forward the 13th forward who's that physical guy. There's no Eric Bolt on this team. There's no, the physical guys are playing already. Clutterbuck, Kuhlman, Zizekas. It's certainly possible that the Isles could, against a team they don't think is physical, could say scratch Kuhlman and put Chimera and fourth line, I guess. But I don't really see it, and I don't see them ever scratching Clutterbuck. So I'm very skeptical the physicality has anything to do with it, or will really change much. I mean, for God's sakes, the last preseason game involved Jose getting into a fight. So I don't really think it's physicality. I would say Jose is probably more physical than Chimera. But anyway, back on track. So yeah, those top three lines all have something different. I guess Bo and Nelson played a lot last year, but Bo is young. And we'll get to Bo in a little bit, but it's still somewhat of a newish line. And of course, the fourth line is still the same. The fourth line is still Kuhlman, Zizekas, Clutterbuck. We saw that all last year. I'm not saying Hosang's really physical, but I'm saying Chimera's not known for being physical either. Again, when coaches say, "Oh, I want a player because the other team is physical," they tend to say that. They don't say it's veteran presence, and Waite told Staple it was veteran presence, and I see no reason to believe otherwise. So anyhow, forward lines roughly the same. Defensemen, I'm not going to call it up right now because I didn't have it ready. But the defense pairs are essentially Leddy versus Leddy Boychuk. The classic 255 is your first pair. That pair has sort of gone up and down. Remember, their first year they were beyond dynamite. The second year they were awful and they got split up. Last year they got put back together and were solid but not spectacular. Again, we'll see what happens with the full year of Doug Waite, and that's always the big X factor here. So that's the first pair. The second and third pairs are where things get interesting. The second pair is Calvin DeHaan and Dennis Seidenberg. Seidenberg had an interesting year last year in that he had a great plus-minus because goalies saved everything behind him, but the shot numbers again weren't good. Calvin DeHaan, on the other hand, well, put it this way, DeHaan doesn't score, but I'm going to I'll pull up Seidenberg right here. I have the Islanders here. Oh, yeah, I do. Hold on. Okay. So this is pair 2. Not what I wanted, actually. Hold on a second. Why is it not showing up? There we go. What's that one? Sorry. Okay, that should be better. Yeah, so that's pair two, which is Dehan Seidenberg. Dehan, on the other hand, well, put it this way: there are some advanced metrics that think Dehan is a top 30 defenseman in the NHL. Not in terms of scoring. Dehan doesn't really score that much, though he actually produces more points than you think. As you can tell from the pages I have up currently are from Micah Blake McCurdy's Hockey Viz, which is a great site. I am now a subscriber, so I can look at these pages, and that's where they're coming from. But as you can see, Seidenberg, over the past couple of years, now he's 36, so he's probably getting worse, has basically been a drain on shots. He basically bleeds shots. When he's on the ice, the team tends to get outshot, which is not what you want from a defensive defenseman, because Dennis Seidenberg, despite his occasional scoring last year, is not a scorer. It's just not what he does. By contrast, Calvin DeHaan, when he's on the ice, the Isles suddenly start shooting the opponents. The two were basically an okay pair last year. It's really not the best use of DeHaan's talents, but for some reason the team, again, probably veteran presence, decided to bring back Seidenberg, and they seem committed to him on second pair. It's not ideal. But it's what it is. We'll get to more. I'd say that the team should give in and get rid of Seidenberg quickly and play an extra kid, but I am a realist, not a optimist, and I don't expect that. So it is what it is. Third pair, again, is where things get interesting. And we'll start going to player choices in a second. We'll start with the D, and we do that. So our third pair, the issue right now for the Islanders is our third pair involves Thomas Hickey, who we all know is pretty well known by now. And then we have three choices the Islanders don't quite seem set on. They're not quite sure what they want to do. Scott Mayfield, Adam Pelech, and Ryan Pulock. For obvious reasons, we don't have data really in the NHL from Ryan Pulock, so I'm not really going to bother putting up anything for him. Incidentally, before we start talking about a fourth option, because I know I saw a comment in the Lighthouse Hockey comment section asking, do I think there's a chance that, say, Devin Tays or someone of the other defensemen, probably being Parker Wotherspoon or Mitch Van de Sample, could make an appearance for the Islanders? And my answer would basically be, unless we have a major injury plague, which can happen, I would expect no. Again, things continue with Doug Weight, but the Isles have consistently been ultra-conservative with calling up defense prospects, as demonstrated by the whole Ryan Pulock scenario, which made no sense last year, and Calvin DeHaan before them, where DeHaan took forever to be called up and people thought it was a bust, and he's really good. So, given that Tays will be in his second year, and there's three guys ahead of him right now, and Wotherspoon and Van de Sample will be in their first years, I'd be stunned if the team calls them up before the roster expands after the deadline. And so I would not expect to see any of those players, barring major injury. If injuries occur and so the Isles lose two defensemen, Tays could get called up. I could see it. But I would not expect that. These things happen, but it's not really in the Isles' MO. And the Isles are already playing a lot of kids. So, assume no. So assume we're basically talking about a third pair defenseman of Thomas Hickey, Scott Mayfield, and or Adam Pelech. The team made a commitment. They gave Adam Pelech a long-term, 3-year deal last offseason. It was kind of baffling. They also, of course, protected him from Chris. There's two things preventing Tays here. The first is, as Luke's pointing out, Tays is a lefty, and he plays the left side. If Tays played the right side, he would be better likely to in there. So if there's an injury to someone on the left side, it could be. And the other issue is that Tays, Tays is definitely the first man up with an injury. Tays is also the age and type of prospect where the team isn't, I suspect, that concerned about him not getting playing time. So if there's an injury on the D, Tays could get called up and could get scratched, and I don't think the Isles will worry about his development. Whereas someone like Wotherspoon or Van de Stamppel, I think the team would want to have play every day. So Tays would be the guy you'd see called up, but again, it would require injuries. Blukes, I disagree, by the way. Pelech played a bunch of right D last year. And so I suspect Pelech is in a running for a right D spot. Though the team, again, has scratched someone like Thomas Hickey in the past. So it's certainly possible you could see a scratch of Thomas Hickey for one of these defensemen. In that case, it'd be Pelech. Again, I would disagree with that, but I am not the coach, and that's what things are. But for now, it certainly seems like Pelech is competing for that right D spot. Because that's the spot that's open at the moment. And again, injury changes everything. But for opening night, the team's going with Scott Mayfield. Which is interesting for a couple of reasons. Mayfield's the oldest of the D, which is one thing. He also had a surprisingly good year last year. I'm not really sure what to make of it. It was not a lot of games, obviously. What I have here is Mayfield over the past 3 years. So there's only 31 games in 3 years is practically nothing. Pelech has 53 games over that same span, and Pelech is 2 years younger. But Mayfield, playing mainly with Hickey, had some surprisingly solid numbers. The team had better shot numbers with him on the ice. He had some okay scoring. He still looks like an oaf. I'm not going to lie. He looks like a total oaf. And, it just was what it was. But he actually didn't look bad with Hickey. And so, the team gave him, Mayfield, interestingly enough, got the most ice time of any Islander player. Now, this is with one preseason hockey game was not tracked by the NHL, so it's possible this isn't totally accurate, but it's close enough that Mayfield got the most playing time of any Islander in the preseason, which suggests they really are trying to see what they have. And I suspect that Mayfield is going to get some significant time early on, though, like I mentioned about the forwards, I expect Pulock and Pelech to get some playing time. But I suspect for now Mayfield's the number one option on that spot. Again, it worked. But, again, things can change. The gap between the players, I suspect, is not so large that you could see things where a player makes a single mistake and all of a sudden the team decides, okay, Mayfield made a silly mistake. That's enough for me. I've seen enough. Pelech next game, or next game Pulock. I don't think anyone quite knows what the Owls are doing with Ryan Pulock. Because, last year, going into the expansion draft, you figure they would have wanted to get him playing time at the very least to see what they had. And they basically did nothing. Which is strange. Pelech is a weird one to me. As I mentioned before, the Isles made a commitment to Pelech, which the stats do not quite understand. The Isles were significantly better with him off the ice. I think he was fine last year in particular, but he just, overall in his career, he hasn't been good. Now, again, it's small sample size. We're talking 50 games we're talking about 53 games over 3 years from ages 20 to 22. So he should still be getting a little bit better. But there's really nothing there statistically which suggests we should be really looking into keeping Adam Pelech. But the Isles obviously see something they like. So, it's interesting. I expect to see a lot of Pelech this year. You don't make a 3-year commitment like that without an interest in playing the guy. And so I do wonder if they think about scratching Hickey, or God forbid, if their plan is, in theory, that if they can't re-sign DeHaan, which I don't think they will, that they maybe trade DeHaan mid-season and Pelech slots in the second pair D. Trading DeHaan is a total dumb, terrible idea, but I do not understand how they did not extend him this offseason, which suggests that they are not going to re-sign him. So yeah, that's the D options right there. It's not good. You know, you look at the forward lines, and it's funny. I had that tweet up from Staples showing the forward lines there, and the first reply is a reply from a Senators fan talking about how the Isles forward lines look pretty damn good, and they do. The first top three forward lines, if we ignore the Chimera thing, look pretty interesting. The D's not really as much. You got that ugly Seidenberg pairing a second pair, and you got a lot of unknowns in the third pair. It's not great. The Isles' last big success being the 14-15 year and the 15-16 year, really 14-15, involves two hyper good pairings. You had Hiknovsky and you had Lady Boychuk, or at the very least you had DeHaan Hamonic and Lady Boychuk, or some combination of those four. You don't really have that second pairing right now that gives you that faith. And that's really the issue. Again, it's certainly possible that Lady Boychuk explodes now that they're freed from Capuano. Again, the whole X factor and everything I'm saying right now is Doug Waite now has a full season to put his system into play, and so we can no longer blame anything on Jack Capuano. So that's an X factor. On the other hand, I hate, Waite had a full half season last year. He had, significant time near the end of the season with younger players who basically hadn't been with Capuano, and I didn't really see anything that different. So I'm questioning whether we'll see things. I'm in general a skeptic of coaching effects being that huge, and if they are, they should be noticeable fairly quickly. And so you don't really see that right now. So that's the D. So I'm not trying to be negative here. Again, let's go back to the forwards. It's not being negative, but if there's a weakness of the team, is defensemen. Okay, that is the weakness of this team. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of and it's not a strong unit. It's not a bad unit. I've seen there's a lot worse units out there. Ottawa's D with Carlson out is awful. Vegas's D is hilarious. Colorado's D is they're still struggling to get 6. So it's not the worst D unit in the league by far, but it's an area that could use improvement. We will unfortunately have to deal with that as the season goes on. Speaking of Colorado, to get things less depressing, they did beat the Rangers tonight. So, fuck yeah. Chris, I'm not really sure the pieces, if I'm thinking about it, if you move Seidenberg, let's say you play Pulock there, and then you've got Hickey, Mayfield, it's still very speculative. There isn't really that kick-ass defense prospect in the system. Pulock's a big unknown. Taze is never considered that high of a prospect, and scoring in the AHL is always a bit weird for defensemen. The Isles love Parker Wotherspoon, and Mitch Van de Sempel looked good in the preseason. But at the same time, none of those guys are the can't-miss top defense prospects. Doesn't mean they can't be great. I mean, Calvin DeHaan's turned out to be as high expectations as you can get. And I do have high expectations for Parker Wotherspoon. I'm very interested in him. But there really isn't that guy who you think, okay, this defenseman is going to be the next defenseman in the future. And again, not a lot of teams have those defensemen in the future, so it's not an Islanders thing in general. But it just means that this is an area. If they're going to make a trade mid-season, defense is the obvious area. So we'll see about that. Naturally, of course, they'll probably extend Seidenberg on me. What can I do? Okay, forwards. So the big news really this evening was that, because if you pay attention to lines and pairings the last couple of days, Mayfield was pretty clearly going to be the defense pair. The surprise was that Jason Chimera is getting the start tomorrow. It's a surprise because the team has been practicing with him on the extra line, which is curious. Which almost makes me wonder if it was a last-second decision. Because usually you don't practice like that, and it's not like they're not announcing it the day before, so, it's not like Columbus will be caught off guard by Jason Chimera in the lineup. So, the issue here is that Chimera is an interesting player. You can ignore the power play part because Chimera won't be playing power play for the Isles, and that's a small sample anyhow. Again, these are 3-year numbers for Chimera, 1 year for Hosang. Chimera's 37 going on 38 season, so he's old. He's only getting worse. His goal scoring numbers are very good. 20 goals a season with his ice time is certainly pretty good, but everything else is not good. To bring up a player to make Blukes happy, Chimera is the guy, the super fast skater, who actually is dumb and bad at defense. Unlike, say, Michael Grabner, who is a super fast skater who used that speed to be good at defense, even if he looked like he didn't know what he was doing. Chimera is dreadful at defense. When I tracked the neutral zone for last year, and I tracked it for Doug Waite's part of the season in completion. Chimera was the worst forward. I'm still calling you Blukes. You're living with it. Chimera was the worst forward in terms of defending the neutral zone. Which means, quite simply put, when Chimera's on the ice, opponents more likely are to get into our zone. They're more likely to get in the zone with possession, and they're more likely to get dangerous chances. If you look over the past 3 years, of which, half of that, 2/3 of that's with Washington, Chimera's teams have been better in shots and in goals with him off the ice, significantly. He's got some value, right? The scoring is real. And so if the team is down a goal in the last 2 minutes, you can make a case that Jason Chimera should be on the ice. It's a weird player to think about, but it's true. It wouldn't be irrational. But at the same time, if the team is tied or up a goal in a late situation, Jason Chimera probably should not be anywhere near the ice. You've got that Thomas Vanek situation, except he's not Thomas Vanek. He's Jason Chimera. And that's a problem. It's just one of those things where he's entirely one-dimensional. And while goals is the best dimension to be if you're one-dimensional, he actually is as bad as defense. He actually is that guy who is probably more harmful defensively than he is offensively. This is the last year of his contract. I'd be surprised if he gets extended because of how old he is, if nothing else. Though he'd probably be cheap, so it's possible. But he's clearly the 13th best forward. I'm gonna take that back. He's probably the 13th best forward of the healthy forwards. Josh Hosang only played 21 games last year, so we know less about him than we do Jason Chimera, but Hosang is one of the best players of the team last year. He put up scoring numbers like you'd expect from a first liner. A lot of assists at even strength. He drove play forward. The team scored more with him on the ice, and they gave up less goals. Everything was positive. it makes very little sense for Hosang to be scratched. Especially over the other forward who I expected might be scratched, Anthony Beauvillier, who Beauvillier wasn't good last year. Now again, Beauvillier was 19, and so Beauvillier is likely to improve significantly at some point. I mean, it's not guaranteed. Some players don't. But Beauvillier was bad last year. And the only time Beauvillier looked okay was when he actually was with Jose. But Beauvillier in general was bad. Now, he had a great preseason, apparently. I didn't watch a single minute of preseason, so don't ask me. I prefer not to watch preseason games because I find preseason hockey too sloppy to watch and too painful. Only thing worse is a prospect game. So, scratching Beauvillier for Chimera wouldn't make me happy, but it would make sense. Again, Beauvillier has struggled to drive play and to score. But that's not what they did. As I said before, I expect Hosang to be back in there. I think it's Saturday's game 2. I expect him to be back in there Saturday. And I'd be unsurprised if, say, Beauvillier is the next guy scratched from Chimera. I expect the first month to see a lot of forwards in and out as they start tinkering. The problem is that Chimera, like Alan Quine and Shane Prince, when they become healthy, are guys who I expect the team to think of as their extra forward and not really guys who they think of as guys they need to play. Whereas Chimera, I expect this team, I was surprised when he kept showing up on the extra line during preseason. And I was kind of surprised at that. I expected the team to give him more time in preseason, and they really didn't. And I wonder who came up with that choice, because strategically it's the right choice. The team is better with Chimera as 13th forward, or at the very least, the team's potential is highest with Chimera as 13th forward, because it's possible Chimera is better than Beauvillier. But Beauvillier has a much higher ceiling, and Chimera is probably getting worse, and Beauvillier should be getting better. But at the same time, I still would be surprised if the team doesn't view Chimera as a guy they want to play, and are only scratching because of lack of spots. Again, it's hard to know, and the big factor, of course, is injury. The Isles are alarmingly healthy to start the season. Their only injuries being Alan Quine and Shane Prince is pretty surprising. Usually you have at least one or two guys get injured in preseason and you think, okay, that clears up a roster spot. And I always suspect teams plan that way. They think, okay, it's good that we have 3 guys for 2 spots because by the end of preseason somebody's going to be hurt. And nobody got hurt. So, it's certainly possible someone gets hurt and immediately the whole decision becomes moot. Again, remember, a lot of these kids are really young. My worry has always been that when Quine and Prince become healthy, that the team will start sending Barzal and so Quine's really the guy I'm talking about, because Quine, by all reports, I'm not sure if he's close, but by November they expect him to be healthy, at least. And so I'd be unsurprised if the worst performing young kid would get sent down and Alan Quine added to the roster. Quine is bad. I would hate that. Quine is bad. And I'm not sure they would do that. But it is what it is. Obviously, I suspect they're in no rush to get Quine back and are telling him, listen, you're getting paid while you're hurt. Please don't rush. But who knows? Again, that's what it is. To be more positive here, again, I mentioned before that there are some stats that had Calvin DeHaan as top 3 defenseman. There was a compilation WAR wins above replacement stat that one of the guys I follow on my Twitter feed tweeted out this evening, which had Jordan Eberle as a top 30 forward, basically tied with John Tavares. So, that's a nice addition there. You know, Ryan Strome and Brock Nelson. Well, why don't I go into those guys right now? Actually, that's not a bad place to go. So, Ryan Strome, Brock Nelson, and Jordan Everly. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry, guys. I did not plan to have Ryan Strome's card come along. Huh. I don't know why. I can never figure out how to get the damn player cards to work. Hold on a second. Oh, that's how. Hold on, guys. Sorry. Again. There we go. That's what I wanted. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So Everly. So this is Everly over the last 3 years. As you can tell, the scoring numbers at even strength are basically a first line rate. And he drove play quite a bit. Everly is good. Everly is very, very good. Incidentally, if you were curious, because I know there was some talk about him declining last year, here's Everly last year, and it's still good. Now, the scoring numbers were down last year, but I think a lot of that was shooting percentage, and he drove play. So, yeah, Jordan Everly is good. Jordan Everly is very good. And adding him to John Tavares will work quite a lot. Ryan Strome kind of struggled, for better or for worse. The scoring numbers were okay at even strength. He probably deserved more ice time. The possession numbers, he didn't drive play that well. He had a great first couple of years, and then he struggled a lot. So that's a big upgrade. That's a big upgrade. Now, the interesting player maybe is Brock Nelson, who at one point in his rookie year looked like he was a great possession player. He sort of hasn't become that anymore. So again, this is Brock Nelson over the past 3 years. The team's actually worse off at driving play with Brock Nelson on the ice. And there was a concern among some people, such as myself, that maybe Jack Capuano was at fault for this. That Cappy basically ruined Brock Nelson. So now we're really going to see what Doug Weight can do. And if Josh Hosang stays with him and Hosang can keep up his good numbers from last year, you could see some improvement from Nelson. Nelson's scoring numbers were fine, but possession was bad. So that's really another X factor here. Again, is it whether Nelson can recover? But the team seems to, the team definitely improved quite a bit by switching Strome for Everly. And I want to make sure that's clear. That's the big positive here. They added a strong forward. Now, mind you, they put Everly with Tavares, and I'm not sure that's the correct move per se, because Tavares, Bailey, and Lee has the 2 years that's been played have been an absolutely top-notch line, and I'm not sure Bailey is a top-notch player outside of that line, so I kind of think you'd rather keep Everly in a second-line role, but again, I suspect things will be fluid. We'll see. Anders Lee should be on the first line, and Anders Lee is terrific. Tavares is amazing. So we should have a first line that's just absolutely deadly right now. There's no question about that. The tricky thing, though, is that the other teams in our conference have gotten mainly better. Philly had a lot of problems last year, but still had a very strong core, and now has added a top pick level player in Nolan Patrick. Not a fun thing about that. The Devils still suck. You don't need to worry about the Devils. The Canes numbers last year, the underlying numbers of the Canes the past 2 years have been very, very good. They just had shitty goaltending. You may have remembered teams in the past in this division who have had shitty goaltending ruin everything. I don't know who those teams would be, but the Canes sort of succeeded those teams. And now they have a new goaltender. And if Scott Darling is as good as his small sample numbers look, well, you could have a very strong and dangerous Canes team. The Rangers still have Henrik Lundqvist, and they added Kevin Shattenkirk, who's a terrific defenseman, and got rid of Dan Girardi. So, yeah, they should be better. They're still a team that's probably on the decline, and they keep basically arresting their decline with small upgrades while the rest of the core ages. At the same time, and if Lundqvist ever falls off, they're in trouble. But at the same time, that's still at least as good as last year's team. The Capitals are worse, but not significantly. The Penguins are still Stanley Cup champs. It's a rough division. It is a rough division. You will very likely, again, have 5 teams in the Metro make the playoffs. In fact, Michael Blake McCurdy's projection system had 6 Metro teams in the top 8 in the conference, with the Islanders being number 6, so missing the playoffs despite being the 7th best team in the division. Yeah, that would be a really, really shitty outcome, so hopefully it doesn't happen. But really, going forward this season, really our questions are, A, which of the young kids, if any, emerge on defense? Can the third pair become a good pair? It's again, I don't want to be too negative on that. Young kids, we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe Mayfield Hickey sticks really, really well, and that was a real thing last year. In which case, well, maybe you've got that, and then you've got 2 good pairs in Dennis Seidenberg with DeHaan. Maybe the forward lines, maybe the kids maybe Beauvillier really shows what he can do, and Barzal is as good as we think. Because again, Matt Barzal is the best forward prospect the Islanders have had. I guess it's really Ryan Strome, but I think he's even a higher ranked prospect than Strome ever was, which would make him the best forward prospect the Isles have had since John Tavares. Not the best forward the Isles have drafted since John Tavares, probably. We really shouldn't talk about the best Isles forward who they've drafted since John Tavares, because I don't think anyone would be happy about that. Hint, he plays for Minnesota. But at the same time, the Isles, Barzal is something. I was very down on Josh Hosing, as Luke's will remind you in the chat, because his numbers in the minors and the CHL were not that impressive in draft +1, draft +2, but again, the numbers were great in the NHL. So between Hosang and Barzal, you've got 2 X factors who could be really, really good. For years, a lot of fans of teams. I just saw this offseason, Nemita, a Flyers fan who you should all follow, NN Stats on Twitter, tweeted out how the Flyers are only keeping 3 of their young players, and fans wanted like 4 to 6. Teams don't tend to keep all their young top prospects on the lines, and the Isles are. Again, Hosang isn't starting, but I'd be stunned if Hosang isn't playing 50-plus games this year. And Hosang played 21 games last year. So if Hosang doesn't play 50 games, something has gone wrong, or someone's gotten hurt, and I expect him to do so. And so there's a lot of young, fresh talent. So there's certainly reason for hope. The things can change very quickly. That 14-15 team, whose underlying numbers were insanely good, was a huge upgrade from the year before. And the lockout season team, 12-13, also was a huge upgrade from the season before. And no one really expected that from a team that was icing Keith Okoye, Michael Grabner, and Colin McDonald was the line, which was a really good line. So there's a lot of potential here. I don't mean to be too negative. There's a lot of things that I don't like. There's a lot of question marks. But there is certainly potential. The Isles have 2 goalies who are at least average, which is basically what you need. So goaltending won't be the problem, or shouldn't be, because goaltending is voodoo and anything can happen. But the Isles have a superstar. They have a whole bunch of. They have a very, very good, improved forward to add by trade with Strome for Everly. And Capuano's gone. So it should be very interesting. Again, I don't want to sound too negative here. That said, certain factors like how many games Jason Chimera gets in and what defensemen play could be a deciding factor. Again, we're in a really tough conference, and single games will matter. It's very likely that the final playoff spot decided by 1 or 2 points, and the Isles could be one of those teams in the hunt. And if they are, and they don't manage to do something smart, it could be enough. But we'll see. So that's basically it for what I have planned for tonight. But if there's any questions, so if anyone wants to ask any questions that I haven't already answered, now would be the time. So Q&A is open. So I'm just waiting for any questions if anyone has any. I know there's like a 30-second delay on the chat to stream to when I'm saying it to when you're hearing it. Yes, Blukes, what's the question? Okay, we're gonna start with Jason here. So the interesting thing about Barzal is that I'm not really sure. Like, I'm very happy that Barzal is not being set to play on a line with Hosang, because the numbers for Barzal, and apparently in juniors he was known for being a very active skater, carry-in guy, which is what I like. But sort of like Josh Hosang, the numbers in juniors suggested a very pass-first player. This is a guy who you're thinking about, a guy who scores, if he lives up to potential, you're thinking a guy who scores 20 and assists on 50. You're not thinking about a guy who scores 40. His goal scoring numbers were not actually that impressive in the CHL. I don't know why it's doing that. There we go. Yeah, that's not very, that's better. Yeah, that should read better on there. Yeah, his goal scoring stats, he scored 10 goals last year for Seattle. He scored 27 the year before, but even before that it was 12 and 14. He is very much an assist player, a guy who racks up a lot of assists. And so I am very skeptical. I would not want to put him with Josh Hosang, who's also very pass first. I'd like to put him with goal scorers. So putting him with Bailey and blanking on who's the other player. Putting him with Bailey and Ladd makes a lot of sense. Ladd can finish those goals. So I'm very interested to see where it goes. It should be very interesting. But I would not expect, like I said, I would have low expectations for goal scoring. I think you're looking at, if you're trying to guess a point number, and I hate guessing point numbers with players I haven't seen, but I think you're hoping to see something like 12 goals and say 24 assists to get 36 points in a rookie year. Um, uh, Going back up, so I missed a question while I was talking that. Uh, Mark asked, okay, Mark asked about 3-on-3 points with Barzil and JHS. I'm not going to try and predict his 3-on-3 points. 3-on-3 points are a bit of a mess. So I am absolutely not going to try and predict 3-on-3 points. And again, I think you're probably going to see in 3-on-3 Barzil and JHS pair with a scorer. So, last year I think you saw a whole bunch of hosting with Tavares in 3-on-3. Barzil will probably get a similar score, like Barzil, Everly, something like that. But I would not try and predict 3-on-3. Who's a defender you can see them going for a trade if the team's in a position to add? So, again, unless there's injuries, I don't see them going for trade just yet, but it depends. There's been a bunch of players waived. I mean, Martin Marincin was just waived today, I think, which made no sense. And I really would love the Isles to pick up Martin Marincin, but I would be very skeptical of them doing so because that would mean they'd have to send down somebody. So they'll probably pass their waivers despite being better than several of the Islanders defensemen right now. But it doesn't mean the Isles can't acquire him later. A guy like Marincin and maybe there's a bunch of cheap defensemen they could acquire. It's hard to know. I don't want to say there because it depends on who's available. It depends on who's doing poorly. A team like Colorado is probably going to be crap this year again, but has no defensemen, so the Isles aren't really going to be going for anyone there. And so you're looking for a team that's bad and probably trying to trade players. But okay. A question from Blukes I actually like. That's a weird scale. Because 5 being playoffs and 10 being cup. Let's say 1 is crappy, going for the top pick. 6 is the playoffs, 10 being cup. Because, just for my own, just to have the scale sort of be more where I would think of it in terms of where things are. I kind of put the Isles at a 5 to 6, just cusp of playoffs. But again, I put the Isles' potential at anywhere from being 3 to 8. So there's a big difference between 5 and 6. Root hard against Calgary, but I expect Calgary to be good this year. That triple M line from last year with Mike Furley, Backlund, and Little Tkachuk is just insanely good. And they added Yager. And Yager is also great. So I expect the Flames to be good, and I expect the Isles to be disappointed there, but who knows? On the other hand, I'll be very curious to see how Travis Hamonic does this season. Because the numbers were really dreadful last year. 2 of the 3 last years, Hamonic's numbers were not good. And so I'm very curious, now that he's on a completely new lineup. I know they added Glass, but I don't expect the Glass to play that much. I'm curious to see what Hamonic does. But that is a team with a whole bunch of really good players and really good young players. So who knows? They could trade the pick. Anyone else? I think we're approaching an hour, which is a good place to cut this off. So thanks for joining me. Hopefully I'll have something more entertaining to talk about with, say, about 5 or 6 games. Figure I kind of want to do these for maybe 1 to maybe 8 games or so we have sort of a sample size to deal with next time. But we'll see. I sort of been doing them when I feel like it, but I'm going to try and get at least a week in advance next time. So thanks for enduring my rambling, and I will see you all online.